I'm here to talk to you today about solving the compliance conundrum. So my name's Matthew Richards. I look after our secure digital transformation practice at Coach. So what is that? It's a team of very talented architects, consultants that cover a really broad range of technologies, pretty much everything that sits in the Microsoft 365 side of the fence, and also pretty much everything on the Azure platform as well. So a really broad range of technologies. So I said we're going to talk about the sort of compliance conundrum. And before I sort of dig into some of the content, I thought it'd be useful just to share some of the statistics, more stats, more maybe not quite as scary as what Sarah was sharing earlier, but still, you know, they certainly resonate with some of the messages that Sarah was saying. And I think the one thing that sort of stands out to me is the massive jump over the last couple of years in terms of the number of incidents that we're seeing, I guess data breaches. You know, again, as Sarah said earlier, these are point-in-time figures, so this is probably, you know, even higher percentage at the moment. So 47% in just 2 years, that's pretty scary. And this number is just going to continue to grow. And that obviously influences the amount of potential investigations that the Information Commissioner's Office is investigating or considering investigating at the moment, in terms of, you know, organizations that may have been not quite as responsible as they should have been in regard to protecting things like personal information or sensitive information. So it's, you know, it's a real challenge. And we couple that with a number of regulatory compliance regimes that we need to adhere to in order to be able to conduct our business. And it becomes a real challenge, right? You know, depending on what organization, what vertical you work in, there are a plethora of these different regimes that we all need to prove to the auditors that we're compliant and therefore can continue to operate as a business. So how do we manage all of this? It's, you know, it really is quite a challenge. So I'll touch on this slide. It's quite a busy slide, but I think, you know, it's important to point out that there really is quite a significant crossover here between being compliant and being secure. A lot of these compliance regimes, and whether they be internal or whether they be, you know, industry defined, define within them a whole set of security controls that we need to, as organizations, make sure that you know, we have in place. So there's quite a crossover between the two. But when we think about being compliant, you know, it's about understanding what we're subject to as an organization, what are our responsibilities, assessing our posture at that particular time and our priorities. And in fact, it's very much a continual exercise, you know, much the same as security is as well. It's not something that we can just put in place and tick the box and we're happy with. It's something that we need to measure, monitor, improve on a continual basis. And on the previous slide where I was talking about some of the challenges, there are, you know, if we look at these regulatory compliance regimes that we need to adhere to, there are, you know, in excess of 220 changes across those every day. So this is really not a tick in the box and we're done. This is something we need to, you know, keep evolving with, keep changing and improving. Much the same with the security side of things. You know, we need to continue to evolve. We need to change with the different cyber threats that Sarah articulated previously. And it's a continual exercise. So both security and compliance work in tandem together. When we think about the different areas within our organizations that we need to look at, you know, the number of devices, the cloud applications that we're using, our on-premises footprint, et cetera, it really, you know, managing compliance and security across those can be a real challenge. When we think about what Microsoft have to offer in terms of helping us in those areas, you know, we've got a number of Microsoft 365 technologies here that can help in terms of information protection, endpoint management, et cetera, and you'll hear a lot more about these technologies in the workshops this afternoon. When we look at the security side of things, Then obviously the defender technologies that seem to be growing on a daily basis. The amount of investment and development that Microsoft put into their both security and compliance technologies, I think, is pretty impressive. I think you'll all agree, and it's quite a challenge to keep on top of, all of these changes. And we need to, consider the hybrid scenario as well. We don't just all live in the cloud. It's very rare to see an organization that's 100% in the cloud. We typically operate a hybrid setup, so an on-premises environment as well as a cloud environment, and having appropriate security controls and compliance technologies that can help us understand or manage that scenario. With Microsoft, we've got the relevant tools here to help us. And from a privacy perspective, Microsoft a little while back introduced Microsoft Priva. So that's an additional sort of privacy enhancement on top of the tools that they already provide. I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time on this slide, but these are some of the challenges that you might be thinking, things that might be relevant to you. First of all, we need to think about what is my data problem? Where is my data? What type of data is that? What type of sensitive information does that contain? How is it being accessed? How is it being edited, et cetera, et cetera? And we've got a number of technologies there from Microsoft, and this is not an exhaustive list, but these are the key sort of technologies that help us address those challenges. So things like information protection and data loss prevention, those are technologies that can help us. From an insider risk perspective, now this is something, again, Sarah touched on or highlighted particularly earlier on. This is something that we're hearing from our clients more often, is the concern around the insider threats. Now this is, I guess I think about it in two key buckets. We've got those sort of malicious intentional activities by insiders that may have been coerced, bribed, or maybe disgruntled. And then we've got the other side of the insider risk, which is those users are just going about their normal day-to-day business and maybe trying to do a good job, but doing it not in a risk-averse way. So understanding the data that they're dealing with and understanding how they should be responsible with that data and what they should do and shouldn't do. So insider risk, in my eyes, covers both of those areas. And the insider risk management technology from Microsoft, again, a product that continues to evolve, really helps us identify those risks. We need to be careful about the amount of data that we're holding, right? The number of companies that, I guess historically had a mindset of, well, we'll just keep it all, just in case we need it. When you do that, you're increasing not only your need to make sure that you're compliant with that ever-increasing data footprint, but you're also increasing your security footprint, right? You're providing more information for the adversaries potentially, or more risk to leak some of that information. So we need to be managing that. So things like records management, understanding the types of data, how long should we keep that data? What, in line with the compliance regimes that we're subject to, what is my obligation in terms of how long I need to keep this piece of data? And using the records management capability of Microsoft 365, allow you to automate the disposal and the workflow involved with that. In terms of getting into potential legal cases, this is often the case. We need to have the right tools in place to be able to collect that information for investigation, and we need to have technologies that have that can be confidently used in legal scenarios. Things like litigation hold and so on and so forth. But things like advanced e-discovery and other technologies there play a role in helping us gather that information. Regulatory requirements, I've mentioned this already. There are a plethora that we're all subject to. If we look at technologies like Compliance Manager, where Microsoft actually take not ownership, but they take these compliance regimes, they break them down into their constituent parts, they maintain and track all of the changes and allow you to sort of structure your efforts in terms of becoming compliant and addressing certain areas of those. as well as things like Defender for Cloud, which also has a raft of compliance, regulatory compliance regimes that you're able to, in most cases, automatically assess your environment against those benchmarks. And then from a privacy perspective, Microsoft Priva, this is a set of technology that really drives two things. One, which helps the user better understand the data that they're dealing with, and also provides more insight to you as an organization or a user of that technology in terms of surfacing the signals that might help you understand where some of the challenges or issues are within your environment. So a lot of things to consider. It's ever changing. There are lots of moving parts. So compliance and both security, to be honest, is an area that at Cocho we've been working on for a number of years. I'm working with a really large number of clients on this, from very small through to very large. So we've developed this compliance journey, as we call it, the success pathway, which I'll come on to in a minute. But this is all about learning from our experiences from when we started and where we are today. And it's really about, looking at the sort of common sense approach to tackling these things. And it's about starting small, to crawl before you can walk, before you can run. And it's taking that iterative approach. It's not trying to bite off too much, more than you can chew. It's about taking those small chunks, doing that well, and iterating as well, adding additional layers of capability or complexity, reviewing how well things are going, adjusting and changing as you move forward. So, talked about the success pathway that we've developed within Cocho. It sort of takes a number of these things into consideration. So it starts from an assessment perspective. Not going to go into detail. This is really high level sort of view, but hopefully it gives you an understanding that we've got a defined approach here, and it all starts from looking at what that particular client has in place at the moment. What is the extent of your data footprint? Where is your data? What types of data are you holding? What types of sensitive information is in there? Armed with that and understanding the different compliance regimes, whether it be internal or external that you need to comply with, then we can start moving into planning, looking at design and configuration, and so on and so forth. And we're focusing on the green sort of circle here, where we're taking those small bits, but doing them well, and making sure that we're taking the whole business on this journey. It's really important to mention that, when we talk about compliance and making sure that we're handling data in responsible ways and protecting it appropriately, it's not just about training your end users, it's about taking the whole company on that journey. And this is where, if you cast your mind back to Rich, when he talked about some of our capabilities as an organization, this is where our business transformation capability comes in. So we can help you manage and transform your organization in terms of adopting new policies, processes, and technology. And then we continue around that circle in an iterative approach, layering on different capabilities, tackling different challenges, adjusting maybe what we did at the beginning because we've learned a little bit more, so we need to tweak and tune to make it a little bit more effective, and continue along that sort of cyclical approach. And it doesn't stop. Right? We need to continually monitor our capability, our posture, our activity in terms of being compliant. The same obviously applies to a security approach as well. And then, again, I'm not going to go into this, quite a busy slide, but in essence, as part of one of the planning exercises that we would take or conduct with you, this is an example success pathway that we put in place based on a foundation, advanced and optimized model.